All right. We have an exciting lineup for you this evening. Many thanks to Margaret Bartley of the Metaphysical Library, Roger Herbst of Seattle 9/11 Visibility Project, Ben Collette of 9/11 Truth Seattle. Can everybody hear me? And the volunteers who've contributed time and resources for making this evening possible. I also want to offer thanks to the ancestors in the Lakota Nation, from which John Hutchison is descended, and to the ancestors of the Haida Nation, from which Judy Wood is descended. And I do believe that they helped to bring people together. Big thanks to Ed Mays of Pirate Cable TV for filming tonight's program. My name is Connie Eichenlaub. I help moderate the 9/11 Visibility Project listserv and have helped with various educational programs for 9/11 Truth Seattle over the past 3 years. I'll be introducing the speakers and providing information. The order of events, which is in your programs, where you also will find the biographies. I hope everybody's looked at the short bios. John will speak first, followed by just a short Q&A session, while Dr. Wood sets up her presentation, and then after Judy Wood is finished, there'll be an hour of Q&A and discussion. So have your questions ready. We'll have 2 people going through the audience with mics, wireless mics. Both speakers have asked that questions be focused and pertinent to the issues they are presenting this evening. The presentations this evening promise to be informative, mind-opening, and will challenge all of us to become more attentive and curious about the physical realities we take for granted, as well as the unusual and sometimes mysterious phenomena happening in the world at this time. We are fortunate to have with us 2 very independent investigative scientists. John Hutchison has been exploring the field of Tesla technology since he was a young child. Dr. Judy Wood, who aspired to be an astronaut as a young girl, or a young adult, was an assistant professor of mechanical engineering at Clemson University when the events of 9/11 unleashed new energies into the world, initiating all of us into a world where political correctness reigns supreme. The 9/11 coup d'etat announced that we were entering a century of global terror wars and increasing militarization of civilian life. Judy Wood calls the destructive energies released on the planet that day the new Hiroshima, and we can see why. New fears, hostilities, a sense of turmoil stormed into our personal and collective awareness. But what some of us did not think or know to ask at the time is what new physical forces of destruction have been unleashed into the world with the events of 9/11. When we sense that the truth is being covered up, or that there is a great mystery gradually revealing itself into human consciousness, we do what we can to understand what we need to know. Not all of us can be scientific researchers, however. I hope there are some of you in the audience this evening, which is why this evening's speakers are going to present information they have about types of technologies and energies available on the planet that have been studied and developed and which play a determining factor in the present and future of human life on the planet. As we listen, we can begin to appreciate the physical energies that hold the material universe together and that can also tear it apart. There is a future for humankind if we understand and use these energies wisely. So John will speak first. John Hutchison is a Canadian researcher based in New Westminster in British Columbia, just outside of Vancouver, and has been working in anti-gravity research for the past 3 decades and has been under contract with the U.S. Army, with the Pentagon, McDonnell Douglas Aerospace Corporation, and the Canadian, German, and Japanese governments. The Hutchison effect, named by the scientific community after John Hutchison, is the levitation of any kind of material of any weight as well as jellification of metals and transmutation of metals. This is an area of great interest to the U.S. government and NASA. In spite of the strong military interest, John Hutchison has decided to take his work to the television networks, Discovery, Fox, CNN, and NBC, because he is more interested in getting this information out to the public rather than supporting black budget projects. John has been doing demonstrations of the Hutchison effect around the world. He is here today to present some of these early news stories as well as segments from the latest Discovery Channel documentaries. And John will welcome a few questions right after he talks, and then the longer Q&A will be from 9 to 10 p.m. We'll go into a little bit deeper questions then. So give a good Seattle welcome to John Hutchison. Okay.
Am I running for president? Well, if I did, I'd have International Ice Cream Day. But coming from the Great White North, it's a real pleasure to be in the United States of America. I always loved it. I always loved the energy from crossing the border. And some of my presentation here is video. And it's all sort of self-explanatory instead of me just rambling on about it. And when I give the word video, they're going to put a video in and you'll be watching some of the early news broadcasts as well as some of the documentary stuff and other bits and pieces of information. And then hopefully after that I can have questions and answers to perhaps some of these unique samples I brought along. Actually, I had a lot of fun going through U.S. Customs. Oh, that's always fun going through that. I shook the guy's hand at the end of the investigation. He said, "Well, to make sure I'm gonna make sure you're on the History Channel." So I said, "Cool." So that was a lot of fun going through customs always. And sometimes they announce me as the mad scientist coming through for, when you take your shoes off, you're going by aircraft and that. So it's all fun. So anyway, I think if you don't mind, we could fire up the video, which is self-explanatory, and then I'll take questions and answers after. Is that cool? For sure? Okay, guys. Okay, then we'll fire up the video. And it's kind of funny. It might get a good laugh out of it or whatever.
Who has devoted a good part of his adult life trying to prove out the theories of a controversial Yugoslavian physicist named Nikola Tesla. His lab is located in the basement of a nondescript store in Vancouver. Hutchison doesn't want to tell us, or doesn't want us to tell you where it is exactly. Working with huge jolts of electricity of up to 500,000 volts, Hutchison is tinkering with Tesla's central thesis that large amounts of power can be transmitted through the air without wires. One of the side effects of his experiments involves the levitation of inanimate objects. He cannot yet predict with any accuracy which objects will rise, when, or where, but they do rise, as you're about to see.
You enter the world of John Hutchison through an old bank vault door, revealing a museum-like atmosphere charged with electric energy. Hutchison sits at a hand-built control panel, fine-tuning equipment some feel might change the world.
I use these headsets here to monitor frequency changes going by the static patterns that I hear. And down here, I'll adjust the magnetic flux. And I can feel the rhythm of the energy.
The rhythms of the energy are generated by an enormous jumble of strange-looking electronic equipment, much of it hand-built by Hutchison himself. Components include vacuum tubes, 40-year-old technology. Some of the equipment is modeled after that of turn-of-the-century physicist Nikola Tesla. Tesla developed alternating current, the electrical system used today. His experiments included the transmission of energy without wires. Some feel he was the greatest inventor of all time. Hutchison began by duplicating some of his early work.
Very similar to Tesla's experiments before the turn of the century, isn't it?
Yes, it is. He used very old-fashioned geyser tubes. And this is a modern neon tube.
You believe that ultimately
electricity could be transmitted without wires over long distances? I would think so, by using vacuum tube oscillators. That would do away with high tension wires, ultimately? Yeah.
The Jacob's ladder effect is demonstrated just for fun. And other effects are duplicated in Hutchison's basement lab. But it was his love of old equipment that led to advanced experimentation.
This is an old dynamotor, turn of the century. And I got it from a scrap dealer. And it appears to be the same kind of motor that Tesla used in some of the experiments.
Hutchison's equipment combines recycled electronics in huge hand-built coils that together defy some established laws of physics.
That's a Tesla coil. In regards to Tesla, it would be probably a very small one. It can fill in about 1.5 million volts.
Did you build it?
Yeah.
How long did it take you to wind something like that?
It took me about a week to do the whole coil. The winding itself, I guess, about a day and a half.
Hutchison cranks up power of up to 500,000 volts, but the source is just one wall outlet. If he has developed a new source of energy, it uses very little power. He sets up metal and plastic objects in the area he feels things will move, but unexpected articles begin to fly. A sponge beyond the set takes off. Hutchison can't see it from his control panel and relies on our information.
It's very important that can you tell me how long it stayed up on the ceiling?
I would say a full second, 1 second, like that. It went up and hit the ceiling 1 second, maybe 2 seconds, and then came down.
Okay.
No. And it slowly and deliberately went up, almost like a levitation. Do you know why this effect is caused?
I really don't. I have some ideas in my mind that being electromagnetic in nature somehow is interfering with the gravitational pull of the Earth.
Shall we try it again?
I'd like to give it another shot.
Sure. Well, good.
So I'll fire it up again. I wish we were lucky.
Watch the tinfoil here.
Hang in there.
The tinfoil just went up and flickered a bit and then dropped down.
Flickered?
Yeah, it just shook.
Hot dog. Okay, I'll keep it.
I was watching.
Okay, I'll keep operating and maybe I'll get some metal breaking up.
He has indeed broken metal into fragments and lifted an entire snowplow. He just can't predict what will move. Hutchison doesn't know if it's the equipment alone or his effect on the equipment, but Canadian researchers are now discussing the Hutchison effect with physicists around the world, and it may lead to developments not even thought of yet.
Grant Fredericks visited the lab this afternoon and has some interesting observations.
When one walks off East Hastings Street in Burnaby into John Hutchison's world, one leaves behind the conventions of the 20th century and enters a scene more in common with something out of a Jules Verne science.
Good evening. Those with electricity. Time machines, and his latest invention has a lot of people interested.
It looks like something out of a Frankenstein movie. But this is John Hutchison's latest project. Hutchison is a modern-day inventor. He lives in Vancouver and supports his hobby of tinkering with old electrical equipment with money he gets from the Ministry of Human Resources. Hutchison suffers from agoraphobia, a fear of open spaces. That's kept him from holding a job and makes him eligible for social assistance. With lots of free time and very little money, his 20-year hobby has become a passion that's earned him a reputation.
Well, I know I'm a bit of an oddball, and I don't mind. I'm a bit eccentric and a little spinny, but I love it. But, the scientists took me serious. I've had some contacts with EBC, and they thought I was a little off the wall.
This maze of electrical devices is Hutchison's most promising invention. No one knows exactly how it works, but it apparently creates an electromagnetic field capable of moving objects from a distance.
Basically, it's a device that projects energy at a distance and affects test samples that either bends them or breaks them up or lifts them up in the air or makes them go sideways.
Hutchison says he can't give a demonstration of this phenomenon right now. It would take a week to hook everything up, but its access to this room is limited. The equipment is being stored here only temporarily, and he may have to move it soon. Still, this amateur film shows what Hutchison claims his invention does. The objects you see are resting on a plastic milk carton close to his device. He says they rise in the air after he hits the switch, and sometimes metal objects simply bend or even break.
You're looking at something which you know shouldn't be happening.
Vancouver businessman Alexis Pizarro has seen Hutchison's project in action. In 1981, a company he helped form signed a deal with Hutchison. The company would promote Hutchison's discovery and work to develop it further.
I immediately realized that this had tremendous significance. It has significance in space, it has military implications, and its understanding could possibly open up a whole new energy source.
Pizarro's company, Ferris Technologies, did spark a lot of interest in Hutchison's discovery. In 1983, a United States Army team investigated the invention after putting up $25,000 in funding. But after the investigation, the funding ended. In 1986, Canada's Scientific and Technical Intelligence Branch examined Hutchison's creation. A letter written on the visit by the branch director concluded, "We do not foresee any further consideration of support, as the phenomenon appears to be intermittent and unpredictable." In each of the above cases, the parties have been attracted by the features of Hutchison's invention, namely that it can move objects around from a distance and has been seen to bend and fracture pieces of metal. But in each case, a big catch has put the interest in check. That catch is that the effects cannot be reproduced consistently. They only happen occasionally and by chance.
At this point in time, it can't be really of any practical use until it's worked on, cultivated into a continuous effect. And indeed, I got that information from the Canadian Defense Department.
With no sustained interest in the project, Hutchison and Ferris Technologies had some disagreements and have parted ways. Hutchison now does his own promotion. He says the latest interest comes from a group of American scientists who have indicated they may set him up in Washington State or California. But Hutchison's not holding his breath. He says before he sees money and backing, any interest is just talk. And until then, his invention will remain a maze of apparently great potential. Cal Barton, CBC News, Vancouver.
A 66-year-old man is facing drug charges after police uncovered an apparent magic mushroom farm.
Energy inventors finding strange new ways to power the planet. goes up must come down, right? Well, unless you've figured out a way to harness an untapped force in the universe. Enter this lab and everything you know gets tossed out the window. Welcome to the world of John Hutchison, where the improbable may just become our reality. John Hutchison has been dabbling with electricity for decades, copying the work of famed scientist Nikola Tesla, whose AC power still runs our world. Along the way, messing about with military surplus gear, John may have stumbled across one of the most amazing scientific discoveries of our age. Experimenting with radio waves and electricity led John to discover an effect which has mystified government and military scientists. It boils, it bends, it sends objects flying through the air.
I was building these replications of Tesla's old machines and found them doing fascinating things. Then this whole thing happened, this fluke kind of thing, the Hutchison effect.
This was some effect. Air squeezed out of baubles, ice drinks moving through space, drill bits levitating. An effect so convincing and so varied, it seemed impossible to fake.
In John's labs, I've actually seen levitation of rock. I've seen levitation of steel ball bearings, glass, where they will levitate. Unbelievable. I've seen electricity go right into objects and a million pieces just fly apart.
In fact, using only 75 watts of energy, enough for a small light bulb, Hutchison made a 60-pound cannonball rise off the table. It would also fuse dissimilar materials, heat metal but not burn the wood it sat on, shatter metal as well as change its crystalline structure. This was something to write home about.
Beginning of 1980, experimenting with all the electromagnetics and electrostatic equipments I had at the time, I started to notice some very, very unusual effects, such as a room being filled up very quickly with multicolored lights, steel bars sitting on wood and not causing any fires, metal turning to jelly, things levitating and jumping off to the ceiling, or simply go up, hover, and then fall back down.
Dubbed by some as the poltergeist machine, there is no one machine, just a lot of old Army surplus gear, randomly tuned by John. No one knows how it works. John has apparently figured out the right combination of radio waves and electrical energy to create the effect. If it could be proven, its impact would be huge. You'd have to rewrite most of the science textbooks, especially the part about what goes up. And the story gets even weirder, involving both the Canadian and U.S. military intelligence.
Here we go, into my place. Canadian government seized my laboratory, which was 22 tons of equipment. I came back from Germany and moved into this place here and started my experiments again with Army surplus and Navy surplus equipment, which I got from warships, and bought a lot from various surplus stores in the United States and Canada, starting in 1994. And some of this equipment actually goes back to the 1940s, directional finding equipment, all kinds of neat configuration waveforms and that, right up to 44 gigahertz. It gives me a wide range and wide spectrum of fields and that to work with.
Of course, given the potential magnitude of an effect which can turn metal into jelly and levitate objects, it wasn't long before news leaked out. In this case, to Colonel John Alexander with INSCOM, U.S. Army Intelligence, whose specialties included training people to bend metal with their minds, or PK, psychokinetic training.
Well, they had an 8mm film, and it was purported to have been taken in Canada, and it showed various items that were levitating, falling, accelerating. The breadth of materials that seemed to be affected by whatever the effect was certainly interesting, because it wasn't just metal. It clearly wasn't just some big magnet or something like that. And it was sufficiently interesting that we said, want to learn more about that. So we agreed to fund him.
Why was the Army so interested in John's effect? Well, look at all those objects going up. instead of down. They knew a hot property when they saw it. This anti-gravity could have a huge impact on military aircraft. New types of propulsion in weight-reduced planes could fly higher and faster. So Colonel Alexander and his team went to Vancouver to test John's effect.
During 1983, U.S. Army Intelligence and Los Alamos National Laboratories set me up in a large laboratory. We did 4 months of testing.
We had a team of 6 people from Army Intelligence and from Los Alamos, including myself, that came out for the demonstration.
As usual, John revved up his machines to create his electronic force field to start the effect. Exactly what happened next is still debated by the various participants.
And things started off very good, actually, because there was a whole battery of lights, fluorescent lights that lit up really bright and then exploded, and then incandescent lamps in this massive warehouse lit up.
The effects that happened always happened when we were not present, and so cannot give any first-hand evidence.
Time progressed in all these experiments. We get mirrors breaking apart, odd voltage things happening.
But Colonel Alexander had given John some metal rods he used in his psychokinetic work to test the validity of people's metal-bending claims. These rods could only be bent through extreme measures, like heating them to thousands of degrees.
Probably the most interesting was a molybdenum rod that I used in PK testing. And what had happened is he presented to me, it had a slight S-curve in the rod itself. We looked at it very carefully to see if it had been heated and gripped or something like that, and found no indication that it had. That suggested to us that there were effects that were going on.
In the end, Bob, a skeptical Los Alamos investigator, deemed the tests inconclusive. And according to this letter from Los Alamos, all documents pertaining to the Hutchison tests were destroyed.
According to Bob, the one man, things didn't work, and let's forget about it and classify it.
While officially the tests were brushed aside, Colonel Alexander has kept an open mind.
Even though nothing happened during our investigation when we were present, 5 of the 6 people present believed that it probably did happen. It just didn't happen, while we were there.
But the fact remained that the U.S. intelligence services left, apparently having written the effect off. Then on the 24th of February 1990, something strange happened. John was out of the country when his lab was forcibly seized by the Canadian government. Despite a court order to return it, John never got his equipment back. When he tried to move his experiments to Germany, the authorities there refused him permission. Months later, John heard a rumor that his brainchild was not dead and buried, but was being studied by the American military.
It was basically classified, and I've been hearing stories for years and feel now that they did get results and are replicating it at Lockheed Martin Skunk Works.
Was it a rumor, or was the largest military power on the planet experimenting with the Hutchison effect? John believes the Pentagon tests of his anti-gravity effect may have ended up at Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, home to secret U.S. military projects, including new types of super aircraft and top-secret or black ops propulsion systems. Stranger still, Nick Cook, a writer for the respected British military journal Jane's Defense Weekly, found out about John Hutchison's work through one of Lockheed Martin's top scientists.
I was at Lockheed Martin. I was with Boyd Bushman, a senior engineer there, and he showed me a film that purported to show some of John Hutchison's levitation experiments. What we saw was a saw, some nails, a hammer, household stuff. Most of them were shooting off the top of the screen. It was almost like an impulse reaction. Normally I would have kind of looked at this stuff and just thought it's somebody's idea of a practical joke. But the fact that it was being highlighted to me by somebody from Lockheed Martin as something I should be paying attention to kind of got my attention. And that was what really convinced me to go and at least have a look at what John Hutchison was doing. I'm 99% convinced that this is not a hoax. I don't think anyone knows what is going on here, but too many people have looked into it, too many people have investigated. People who have my respect for me to think that it's a hoax.
Eventually, Lockheed Martin would send their own team to conduct tests. But John hasn't heard much since, and he worries about his technology being used for military purposes. Like Galileo in his time, who was imprisoned for looking too closely at stars, John and his technology have been stopped cold, shunned by mainstream science. Frustrated by his inability to bring this anti-gravity technology to the world, John spends his days gathering more Navy surplus gear for his much smaller apartment-based lab.
Better try it to make sure it works. That's kind of great.
For those prone to claustrophobia, John's home is not the place to stay for drinks and a game of cards.
Living here in this space is like living inside a very cramped submarine. My girlfriends find this rather interesting and quite different. And actually I had some girlfriends stay overnight. They didn't seem to mind it. It hasn't got the best of things for feminine amenities, but they managed to tough it out, let's say.
This is a shower box, I call it. Renamed the shower box, so when I come in here and after I get out of bed, I pull up my trusty navy-colored box, which contains all kinds of weird and wonderful stuff for growing hair and creams and stuff, and shaving equipment. Then I proceed to crawl into the little box there and start cupping myself with a cup of water and shave and all that. So I go into that routine and then think of what I'll be doing for the day. So what I have is this thing is on a string. It's a toy UFO. I'm going to suspend it from a string off the floor, firing energy fields at it and see if I can get it to even move.
Working on his effects research, John sees himself as more of an artist than scientist. Turning and twisting knobs like a painter. Dipping into electrical fields to access a random force field. But in this small lab, it's even less predictable than before. The saucer is moving and changing direction, but there might be other forces at work here. Colonel Alexander, who trained people in the U.S. Army Intelligence Service to bend metal using their minds, believes that John could be inadvertently creating the Hutchison effect through his own PK, or psychokinetic powers.
One of the possibilities is that the electronic fields were actually amplifying some sort of PK experience that he was having or causing to happen. It is not uncommon, if you study the whole field of poltergeist phenomena, that strange macro PK events occur and yet seem to be beyond the control of the individual who is causing it to happen.
An example of this kind of random event happened in 1989 when a visiting Vancouver news crew was setting up at John's lab to film the Hutchison effect. The target area was that yellow crate with the metal objects. But to everyone's shock, a sponge in the back of the room took off into the air and then fell back down. John didn't actually see it and was genuinely surprised.
Like that, it went up and hit the ceiling 1 second, maybe 2 seconds, and then came down.
Well, some time ago I was doing some testing and got into some big trouble after I levitated a toy UFO and some other objects.
Apparently, John's experiments were lifting objects in nearby homes, and the neighbors called the police.
The police came full bore in here with engineers, inspectors. They photographed all the equipments very carefully. It's almost like if you called in a cleaning crew. They didn't touch anything. It's like they made everything look neater for some strange reason.
It seems like someone in the shadows still cares what our hero is up to. Frustrated by authorities and lack of recognition, John has been spending time developing his new project, batteries that last forever, based on the somewhat bizarre zero-point energy theory. Followers of this theory believe that all physical matter floats in a sea of energy, which, if collected and converted into electrical power, could more than meet all the world's demand for energy.
I feel everything has a life force to it. I tend to visualize that atoms are a whole universe, and when you're combining one atom to make millions, if not trillions of them, you have a piece of metal, perhaps. Every time you run your hand across a piece of metal, you're taking off several million atoms at a time.
To demonstrate how energy is everywhere, John uses rocks from his neighborhood and in 2 hours makes a zero-point battery strong enough to power a pen light.
I make sure it bombs. Almost 1/2 electron volt. This is better than a conventional battery, simply because it never runs down. So with these things, they could last approximately as long as minerals last, up to maybe 1,000 years, unknown.
Realizing his batteries could help solve the world's energy crisis, the Japanese have embraced John and funded him to build his bigger crystal-based models.
I got orders from Japan and sponsorship for me to make more of them. So the money would come through into my bank account, and indeed I made units that are actually in Hiroshima City. If you don't mind.
While various zero-point energy devices were funded by the Japanese, so far none have taken off on a mass scale. Whether building batteries or levitating objects, John Hutchison is an eccentric enigma. Of course, virtually no mainstream scientists take John or his invention seriously, but then only a little over 100 years ago, people believed it was impossible to send a radio wave across the Atlantic. Now just imagine if this backyard scientist really has discovered a primal force of nature that could transform our world.
I am only taken seriously by the military scientists. The academic scientists really don't know what to make of me. Well, to say a lot of other people too don't know what to make of me. I'm just a different person, and I'm kind of happy with myself. I don't want to try and change myself.
These are the results. Objects floating in the air. You'd think it's a breakthrough in the world of science. Yet, to this date, the Hutchison effect has not been reproduced by anyone but John Hutchison. Adding to the mystery, the Canadian government confiscated his anti-gravity equipment in the late 1980s. The U.S. government has also become extremely interested in the Hutchison effect. In fact, one U.S. Army lieutenant colonel sent this man to investigate John Hutchison's phenomenon.
We're talking about what I would categorize as mind over matter. And if it's that, then it won't become an anti-gravity machine in the future, but I believe it should be of interest to science.
Engineer Jack Houck works for an aeronautical corporation. On his 2-day visit 12 years ago, he videotaped cylinders falling and gun barrels crashing on cement. Houck believes that the Hutchison effect is real, and he knows why John Hutchison is the only one who can pull off the anti-gravity trick.
My best judgment is that this correlates with the types of things that happen with the mind effect, mind over matter psychokinesis.
John Hutchison was skeptical of that theory at the time, but now believes his mind might be partly responsible.
Perhaps this is a byproduct of working with these high-energy fields for so long, that you interact with them and they seem to actually act on the neurotransmitters in your brain.
John Hutchison still hopes to someday apply his anti-gravity discovery to space propulsion and free energy systems. Knowing those possibilities keep the Hutchison effect very much in demand and keeps him ready for the next time the government comes knocking.
I think John is a very warm person who
seems to have stumbled on some very interesting phenomena.
At least one well-known physicist in Ontario is still trying to duplicate the Hutchison effect. So far, no luck. Now,
real progress is being made in a laboratory in Canada. Here, the full significance of the physical laws of light and space have become clear to John Hutchison, and he is utilizing this knowledge to produce cause and effect experiments which lead to an understanding of the harmony of nature. Science, in harmony with the laws of nature for the good of mankind, will hold great values in many fields and would advance its course beyond our present comprehension. John Hutchison has been working in the areas of electromagnetic forces and the changes in the molecular structure of materials for many years. He has in his time achieved a breakthrough in anti-gravity knowledge, providing spectacular examples of heavy objects flying through the air without any visible signs of propulsion. He has also made amazing discoveries concerning the alteration of compositions of materials by subjecting them to a form of electromagnetic bombardment.
We're looking at something which you know shouldn't be happening.
The result of these experiments showed in graphic detail metal heating to a near liquid state without heat. Hard metals would turn into soft rubbery objects, proving that any substance could change its form if the science involved was understood.
I immediately realized that this had tremendous significance. It had significance in space, it had military implications, and its understanding could possibly open up a whole new energy source.
Hutchison is one of the growing number of scientists who realize that by applying physics to the natural laws of the universe, science will be taken into areas previously unrecognized. John Hutchison's achievement will give science a new momentum as it moves into the next century.
Some of the work of the lone inventor, John Hutchison, Canada, Vancouver, Canada. Hutchison takes two Tesla coils and essentially puts in the center of them a target, which every target has certain nonlinearities, and then blasts away with these two coils at them. Basically, what he establishes is an electromagnetic fighting itself, electromagnetic forces fighting themselves. And gravitational force is made when, a gravitational potential is made when electromagnetic forces fight themselves to a draw, when, in other words, the gradients become zero. The gradient vectors, or the resultants, become zero, but the two forces are still in there slugging it out. All the energy is still going, the work is still going, but it's trapped locally. That's internal energy. That's what gravity is. And the Whittaker paper tells very well how to do that. So when John got things just right, he didn't have control of it, absolute control, but he bored in there with persistence, and when he got things just right to get the forces to fight to a draw, and there was the right nonlinearity in the target, he would have levitation in things even 64 pounds. He would also, another thing you do with such a thing is you cause the magnetostatic potential to change a vacuum. In other words, that's pole, an unfortunate name in magnetism. But in other words, it causes deposits of monopoles inside materials such as metals. And you'll literally have, the monopoles repel each other, and you'll have the explosive separation of metals into all kinds of grains and structures according to the waves in the Tesla coils that you're bombarding it with. And so he produced magnificent breaks, Hutchison did, in metals and splits as if it were Venetian blinds. And another thing it does, since this stuff comes from the nucleus out, it doesn't go through the electron shells. Its medium is the nuclei. What you have then is you have changes in the atomic nuclei, and which result in lattice changes. You have the production of alloys, which cannot be made in this world with normal processes. And some of those alloys appeared in John Hutchison's work as a result of that kind of bombardment. Another thing you have is once charged with scalar radiation, the nuclei then continue to discharge over a long period of time. And so the material continues to change, alloy form and so forth, over a period of even a year. And you have those changes occurring in his work also. He was reproducing, and has been reproducing, some of the work of Nikola Tesla, and even some of it going further. But that's what he's doing. What he's doing is real. And unfortunately, most people regard John Hutchison as being a little bit off and not really understanding electromagnetics and not really understanding a Tesla coil. Nothing could be further from the truth. He's doing the real electromagnetics. He's doing kind of electromagnetics they don't know anything about. He's doing electrogravitation and real Tesla work.
The technology that we are aware of is quite staggering anyway. But then there is also the technology which the governments are
ハチソン効果を起こすには至っていません。しかもこの革命をかけた挑戦が始まっています。
取材に当たった日野記者です。
3日間シリーズでお伝えしたんですけれども、我々の常識では考えられないことばかりだったと思うんですけどもね、要するにあれほど本格的にフリーエネルギーの研究をしている人というのが実際にいるわけですね。
そうですね。その背景があるということなんですよね。エネルギーに関する国際学会
My name is George Hathaway. We're in the Toronto laboratory of Hathaway Consulting Services. And this lab that you see around you is set up to investigate new concepts in physics and engineering, especially those that are directly related to novel energy and propulsion technologies. By far the most advanced and unusual such non-conventional energy technology that I have ever witnessed is the Hutchison effect. This video will try to document Hutchison's research and suggest basic physical theories which might help understand and explain what I have called the Hutchison effect. Much of the work at this laboratory in Toronto is meant to try to help investigate and elucidate the physics underlying the Hutchison effect. This presentation will be divided into several different sections, each of which will proceed more or less chronologically. The first section will describe what is meant by the Hutchison effect itself and give a brief background. Next, you'll see some of the early film footage that was taken by myself and mostly by John Hutchison late at night. From 1980 to 1985 timeframe. Then I should discuss my personal involvement with John Hutchison via a company that was set up to understand and try to develop the Hutchison effect. Following this, you'll see later results from the 1988 to 1989 timeframe, a point at which John was involved with another company in Vancouver, British Columbia. In 1988, I formally presented the Hutchison effect at an international symposium on new energy technology, which was held in Hull, Quebec, Canada. And at that time, I suggested that several physicists whose work should be investigated be contacted to see whether they could help to understand what is going on. And I also appealed to scientists generally to help to elucidate the concept and the physics behind the Hutchison effect. Finally, I'll conclude with a summary of the Hutchison effect, giving possible and potential applications of the effect, and providing some future directions and recommendations.
Well, it gets kind of boring from here. This pretty much is the end of the tape. It just goes on to show a clock and the actual thing set up and the damage around the Red Bull commercial. That was in 2006 I was doing it for friends in Hollywood land, and I guess we can turn it off and rewind the video and I can start talking. That's quite an interesting info commercial, I guess. I think it's kind of funny in some aspects. It's kind of cool doing that stuff. Okay, I am ready to take questions and answers on my strange, wild videos and other crazy experiments, so fire away.
Okay, you said you didn't know which direction these field energy were going. Have you tried to anyway measure, like in your lab in particular, have some sort of electromagnetic spatial survey going on so you can see where the energy is going? Because it looked like what was happening to the Red Bull, like there was, like if you see stuff that's running down a drain, first it starts slow, stuff, if you have sediment in a liquid, in a container, it moves slow, and as it gets, like, the hole gets bigger, and the flow of water leaving that area gets faster, the stuff starts moving, and it drains down the hole. It's like, it seems like you're breaking into some area with your energy force field and creating a disturbance which can cause that movement. But if you're trying to quantitatively measure the three-dimensional and beyond spheres to see where this energy is going, how strong it is in this area or this spot.
Yes, that was actually done by U.S. Army Intelligence and McDonnell Douglas plus other corporations over the years. This is a recent video in 2006, and I ended all my demonstrations in 2008 when the fire department closed it all down because it was interfering with too many people, residences around New Westminster. And I have the letter actually with me here. So, yeah, it's been measured and tested and all that.
What did it indicate?
Well, it indicated that I'm working in a quantum field. I have a lot of measuring equipment to measure all the different aspects of it. Like I said, I'm not a scientist. I let the scientists do the work. So I let the experts do the measurement. Although I can do the measurements too. I'd like to feel in the quantum field there's all kinds of possibilities in communicating at great distance, the manipulation of gravity and time. That's something I studied quite a bit of when I was in Germany. The cyclotron results on different time particles and gravitons and dilatons and that kind of thing. So I'm leaning more really strongly in the quantum realm.
Okay, one more question. Who wants to choose?
Okay, so the question is, what was the government's reasoning or excuse for confiscating your equipment?
That particular aspect, they didn't want a North American technology going to a German government. It'd be an act of treason, so they confiscated it.
Wasn't it Jake and Morgan who burnt down Tesla's equipment in Colorado?
Yeah.
I don't know. I keep running into problems with inspectors and people when I start doing the stuff too dramatically. I guess rightly so, because the mayor of New Westminster, he was supportive of my work for a number of years, and the city hall was just getting too many complaints.
Judy, you ready?
Oh, I just tell them what I'm doing.
Okay, just like 2 minutes.
Yeah, they do.
If they were experimenting with that technology, then maybe that's what
Oh, the Black Ops? Yeah, they're working on that all the time. For a long, long time, actually. I just don't want to go in that realm. I want to just put this out in Hollywood land and have a lot of fun doing actually different things like free energy, anti-grav, Philadelphia experiment, all the crazy stuff, and then start inspiring the new age of inventors with kids and hobbits and people. That's the way to go with this stuff. I don't want to go into I don't want to go into military-industrial complex and work 9 to 5, but 9 to 5 and working in production is a lot of fun, and the kids love it. I get a lot of emails from the kids and see the TV shows and that.
Has it affected your health at all, working around all that energy?
Actually, it does seem to reverse aging.
You look like you're 24.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I want to get younger. I said it's 37 on Paris's website, so it sort of passed and didn't pass. I was in competition there. I was a casting member. Got into #1 spot, actually. That's kind of cool, but I haven't been called by MTV to do my thing yet.
Have you had any issues with the nails or metal fasteners in your apartment building?
Good question. Yes, actually some bolts turned funny. And that was one of my concerns, is that the nails in that would turn into mush. But I did, when we were doing a film for National Geographic TV and film, some of the chains started melting. They probably got that on high definition. And the last TV show we did was for Fox, and we got Rob Simone, radio host in LA, being our host, covering an HGH canister levitating and vanishing on high definition. So that's the hottest topic these days in the latest TV show stuff. Like these shows here you're seeing are aged, old ones.
What difference did you see after the government confiscated your equipment and then you had to buy new equipment? Did you see a change in what happened, or what kind of change did you see when you had to start over again with entirely new equipment?
Well, originally I had some equipment returned to me, and I just said, "Wow, this is getting ridiculous." So I sold that off. I mean, this is an industrial setting with large transformers that were weighing in around 2 tons each. And then I sort of got re-inspired to play around with this stuff again when my ex went back to Hollywood land. In 1994, I got I think it was a 2-ton shipment of equipment from Fair Radio Sales from Ohio. But then I got involved with the Artificial Reef Society of British Columbia, where I worked on 4 warships, and had endless access to machinery and that. So actually, going by memory, I was able to produce some results. I got kind of inspired with Fox TV in 2000. Then there was a gap. Then you saw this one here with Griffin Film Productions. That was filmed in 2003 and aired. It aired in Canada for a while. Then last year in the United States on July 4th on Discovery Channel. Oh. So after that, I got re-inspired yet again for National Geographic TV and film, China TV, Japanese TV, and hundreds of other production companies. So I have thousands and thousands of hours of info commercials.
What do you think about the fruitfulness of using attention and intelligence as an explanation for the effects you observe and making a link between them, or do you intend to just manipulate physical effects?
I think that intention, mind, and that are, well, as you know, the secret. Amplifying the secret through more knowledge of the secret in quantum science. There's a lot there. That's making a lot of groundbreaking scientific news releases lately. Okay. The U.S. government had a program going for a very long time called the U.S. Psychotronics Association.
Okay, John?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
You are welcome. Okay. Cool.
Pulled iron molecules to the center or something somehow? Pulled it in the middle.
In the
to make
middle,
it
it's
more
magnetic. I didn't. Judy would have played with them. I didn't know that.
Interesting. I wonder what the makeup of it is. It's an alloy, right? Stainless steel. And I wonder if it's shifted from when the center. Yeah.
My partner has analyzed maybe several hundred of them.
One theory I have is that basically the forces put everything together. Basically, a very high frequency wave. Frequencies of like electrons. I think if you manage to figure out how to disrupt that, I mean, it's just a wave. It's like light. It's an extremely high frequency. If you disrupted that, then this is what happens. It looks like, molecularly, atomically, it's just falls apart.
Very different. Carefully checked before any kind of radiation. In fact, there's no radiation there.
Maybe I have my card here. I have some theories. Maybe you might be interested in them. Basically, frequency from now, maybe something you can. Like give you some ideas of like I think that maybe directing the research to like kind of concentrate the charge on the objects, like maybe like I said, maybe manage to figure out a way to concentrate huge amounts of imbalance on an object.
It's something good about it.
Electrostatics is that as soon as you charge something up, it's going to immediately discharge there.
Well, I think George Athwood's covering that too.
Is it like
all I can do is I can get some to levitate. I can't get anything heavier than clear.
Yeah.
Everything else is fine.
Yeah. That's nice.
Before
I think I'll take a look at
and people are worried about what it might do to them. Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
I wonder if there's a way.
No, but I'm interested in Max Earth's creation. Max Earth.
Oh dear. They stuffed backwards off the stage. Rob, are you okay?
Oh my God, is he okay?
Rob, are you all right? Are you okay?
Ouch. Wow.
Are you
okay? I just like.
Wow.
I've done that. Invigorated.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
let's move the table in. Here, John, we're going to move the table in.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay. That's really dangerous.
Actually, when you pull apart the clay,
Oh yeah, that's good.
when it's kind of brittle, it's not really soft. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Oh, probably did.
Oh, kind of exciting.
It's nice to be fine.
You're on the quantum field there. Yes.
This is amazing.
I sent Dennis a friend of mine, finishing August for the guy.
That make a great paperweight.
He lives in Vancouver and talked to him. Very nice guy. I like him.
Yeah.
I do give him away as gifts sometimes, folks.
Yeah, I watched him come up. I grew up there out of the fountain and kind of very outspoken.
Well, this thing is really heavy. What is this?
Very spiritual man. Yeah, that's what I found about Dennis.
Sorry, let it go. No, it's okay.
What is this right here?
I think it's stainless.
Stainless steel?
Stainless steel.
Oh, well, I was just real quick about the HHO. It's a gas from water, you probably know. And when it's ignited and used as a blowtorch, it affects many different materials similarly. It doesn't really burn things, it kind of melts.
You mean the Braun gas thing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I remember that stuff.
Yeah, it's still around.
It's fun stuff.
Molecularly power affects things kind of similar. It doesn't really burn.
I'm trying to find out where the poles are on this one.
For instance, kind of melts things.
Yeah, I was playing with it in the Tesla Museum in Denver. Was it Denver or Colorado Springs?
a while ago, and
somebody possibly might be able to I did go to one of those sites. There was a picture of a piece of metal and wood in it.
oh, that one is.
You don't have that.
It should be here.
Yeah, it should be here. Maybe someone is.
That's what
Right?
You know, that reminds me of what it was like in the boiling.
What's this? Oh, magnet. We're testing this out. Splinter, yeah. Looks like wood. Oh, this part. Electromagnetic.
Weird. Also, I'm working on a TV show, a local TV show.
It's repulsing. Would you like to try?
I'm
sorry, I just dropped the magnet.
Hey, I'm always for interviews. I get a lot of film critics. What with King Fine?
Oh, no.
Okay, leave them there.